Mr. Baba and his family live in a public housing compound in the suburbs of Tokyo. He's an office worker for a construction company, 38 years old, and his wife, 35 years. They have 2 children. The 11-year-old boy is in the 5th grade at primary school, and his 9-year-old sister in the 4th grade. They are a typical office worker family in Tokyo. This chart shows the transitional changes of the average number of family members and that of households in Japan during the period from 1955 to 1985. As you see, the number of households has increased rapidly, while, on the other hand, the number of family members decreased. The chart here indicates the transitional changes of birth rate from 1935 to 1984. The rate is shown to have made a tremendous increase from 1947, 3 years after the end of the war, to 1950, the period represented by what is called baby boom in Japan. During the following decade, however, the rate decreased dramatically by half. Especially, there was a growing number of nuclear families in urban areas. But how were such social phenomena, the decrease of family members and the increase of nuclear families, brought about? The end of World War II. Most of the major cities in Japan, nearly all of them industrial cities, were destroyed, and their economic functions almost paralyzed, resulting in extreme nationwide poverty suffered by all people of that time. Meanwhile, urban population increased a great deal with the addition of as many as 6,300,000 people who repatriated from overseas during the immediate post-war years. Serious food shortages swept across the country where people lived in near starvation. This photograph shows a scene of people appealing for rationing of food for children. Despite all that, there was a sudden increase in the birth of babies at that time, because people, including those who repatriated from abroad, started their new lives in the war-devastated country. While at the same time, artificial abortions were increasingly practiced as a result of housing and food shortages and extreme difficulties in finding jobs. Since artificial abortion was prohibited by law at that time, it was frequently practiced illegally, often resulting in the impairment of mothers' bodies. In 1948, the government enforced the eugenic protection law to legally permit abortion, launching measures to protect mothers' health. This law was drawn out with great emphasis on promotion of family planning, especially providing a clause in favor of economic stability of people who are struggling to survive in rigorous social conditions. This is a gynecologist's clinic in a special area designated in accordance with the eugenic protection law. This chart indicates the transitional changes in the number of artificial abortion practiced in accordance with the eugenic protection law. The figure exceeded the 1 million mark in 1955. Responding to this, health centers and private organizations concerned played a leading role in spreading the knowledge and method of conception control. At many places of work, campaigns for a better lifestyle gradually gained force to play a significant role in the nationwide endeavors to improve living standards. This movement for a new lifestyle was aimed at creating fine homes for people while enhancing the quality of their lives for greater happiness. And it helped people to rationalize the living style, and especially to practice family planning as well as health and sanitation care. This chart indicates the transitional changes in practiced contraception during the post-war period. The number of those who practiced contraception rapidly went up as shown here, from 29% in 1950 to 80% in 1984. In addition to the protection of mother's body, it was one of the greatest tasks to ensure the sound growth of babies. To achieve that end, the whole nation made great endeavors to lower the infant mortality and to exterminate tuberculosis, then the major cause of deaths among many youths. The chart shows the infant mortality in Japan. In 1940, 88.6 in every 1,000 babies died, but today the number dramatically decreased to mere 6. We take a look at the causes of death in infant mortality. It is observed that most of them died of infectious diseases, but today death by infection is almost none. This is the result of endeavors in the extensive movement to exterminate the death of babies. For example, mothers' classes were opened for pregnant women. Health guidance for pregnant women and infants at local health centers was practiced across the country, including regular medical examinations for 0-year infants. This is a scene of preventive vaccination, one of the most important parts of the maternal and child health care movement. Many mothers also led people in the community to meet the challenge of improving public health. This is a maternal and child health handbook, which marked the starting point of the movement for the maternal and child health. An original type of this maternal and child health handbook had already been made before the war. To promote the spread of this system, the authorities allowed special rations for rice, cotton wool for delivery, and belly band cotton to those who presented the health book. These items were not easily available during the austerity time. This is a scene of rationing commonly seen at that time. The system for issuing maternal and child handbook was intended to systematically control the health records of conception, delivery, and infant rearing, such as pregnant women's health conditions in general, as well as those before and after childbirth, the health condition of the baby, and preventive vaccination. This system is adopted and practiced in some other countries as well. The pre-war Family Register System and Residence Registration Act greatly helped to step up these measures, thereby allowing accurate grasping of population changes. Throughout the period before and after the war, tuberculosis covered most of the causes of deaths among young people. Nationwide endeavors were exerted to exterminate tuberculosis, which as a result decreased rapidly. In this movement, people's effort for prevention of tuberculosis played a significant role. Here's a scene of mass examination for people's health, carried out in all parts of the country. The system for mass examination and preventive vaccination with BCG had already been practiced before the war, but it was in 1955 that the examination system spread on the nationwide scale. In other words, people were legally forced through city, town and village administrations to receive tuberculosis examination once a year. Those who needed more precise health checkups were to be re-examined, and if found out to be tuberculosis patients, They were given health guidance and were placed in a systematic process of medical treatment. This is the scene of post-operative rehabilitation. Such movement for prevention of tuberculosis was carried out with great success by the extensive participation of local residents, above all by women's associations and youth groups of each community. As a result of these nationwide endeavors, the post-war average lifespan extended remarkably. In 1947, the expectation of life of men was 50.06 years and that of women 53.96. But in 1984, they further lengthened. 74.54 years for men and 80.18 for women. The social security system for the aged was further improved. This is a health handbook in which the health and disease conditions of the holder are precisely stated for easier physical checkups if necessary. The book is given to individuals over the age of 70 years and those above 40 upon request. In addition, people older than 65 years will be entitled to receive medical treatment in accordance with the Health and Welfare Act for the Aged, by obtaining that handbook and a certificate for this purpose. Here, old people are enjoying gateball, which began to spread widely among the aged as an ideal sport for health and pleasure. The rapid decrease of family members in each household during the post-war period was largely the result of social and economic conditions of that time. This chart shows the growth of GNP, the indicator of growing Japanese economy after the war, and the increase of individual income. As is indicated here, the revival of industry 10 years after the end of the war was accompanied by the rapid increase of individual income. But through the process of economic development, various kinds of social phenomena began to take place in connection with the decrease in the number of family members. One of them is the much greater chance for higher education for young people. After the war, the period for compulsory education was extended to 9 years. Nowadays, 94% of youth go to high school and 35.1% of them to college and university. The higher education received by the youth has greatly helped create good quality labor force, which has provided a prime mover of economic development. On the other hand, however, it lifted the average age of marriage and naturally increased the expenses for education, making couples take greater interest in family planning. Another aspect was that young labor force in rural areas began to flow into large cities. Here's the scene of mass employment for high school leavers. These people settled in cities where they had their families. On one hand, the large-scale inflow of rural population created problems of overcrowding large cities, while on the other, depopulating rural areas. Arising in cities were other new problems such as housing shortages, longer distances for commuting and going to school, and various kinds of pollution. The Housing and Urban Development Corporation was established in 1955 to solve the nationwide housing shortages. This is a public housing compound completed in the earliest times of the corporation. One unit, categorized as 2DK, consisted of 2 bedrooms and a dining kitchen, where 2 children was the limit due to the room layout. This is a detached house for comfortable life. A usual case is that by the time you have paid off the installments, the children will have grown up. In any case, the repayment of housing loan covers a significant part of the family budget. Expenses in daily life increased rapidly. Seen in the photograph taken in 1956 are the three most coveted items: the television, washing machine and refrigerator, which mirror the strong wish of people at that time. Life became better with modern conveniences, but people were placed under the pressure of having to pay greater expenses, and repayment systems by monthly installment spread rapidly. This chart indicates the spread of durable consumer goods for urban residents during the past 20 years. The spread of refrigerators and television accounts for nearly 100%, and that of cars and air conditioners over 50%. The chart indicates the transitional changes in people's attitudes concerning the practicing of family planning in the post-war period. The greatest in number in the 1950s was financial reasons, an attitude to protect their own lives because many children meant greater difficulty in life. But in the 60s, the reason changed to education of children, which became the general attitude of people towards life. In the 1970s, the reason changed again from children's education to mother's health. In this manner, small-scale families came to settle in society as the ruling pattern of ordinary households. Mr. Baba is one of such average urban workers. He spends 3 hours every day for commuting to and from his office. Here's Mr. Baba at work in his office of a construction company. Their average monthly income is 420,000 yen. Mr. Baba earns 350,000 yen and his wife the remaining amount. Next, we'll see the expenditure in detail. They spend 73,000 yen for food, which accounts for 21% of the total earnings. 64,000 yen covers taxes, social insurances, and so forth. That's 18.6%. And the remaining amount for commuting, communication, light and heat, water service, housing, education, health and medical care. Under the present circumstances, Mr. Baba's income is not sufficient enough for saving and other insurances. Here's Mrs. Baba, who's having a hard time trying to help the family budget. Particularly, the price rises during the past 5 years seen in the family balance sheet at the Babas show a greater ratio of rises in expenditure for education, housing and sundries. Above all, expenses for education indicate the highest ratio of price rises. We study it more precisely. The school fee is followed by expenses for reference books and the prep school fees for extra studies. The boy actually goes to 2 different prep schools. The daughter is learning the electron. Mr. Baba and his wife take great care to bring them up with good education. Since their children are now going to primary school, Mrs. Baba does part-time proofreading work, which she can do at home to make living a little easier. This woman is doing part-time work at a supermarket as a cashier. Whether part-time or full-time, the marked increase of women advancing into numerous places of work is one of the remarkable post-war social phenomena. Women have more free time today, and an increasing number of them have their own jobs outside. Women's advance into society and the higher marrying age had a great deal to do with the decrease of children. But a recent survey in connection with vital statistics indicates that more couples would prefer to have one more child, for instance, 3 children, rather than 2, if circumstances would permit. The chart shows the present population pyramid, giving an impression that structural changes in population in Japan for less births, less deaths have been achieved. Consequently, however, it is posing a problem of quickly aging society, for which appropriate measures should be drawn out and implemented. A future population estimate predicts 16% of aged people over 65 years in the year 2000, soon clearing the 20% line. The increase of the aged will pose many problems to be solved, such as those for pension systems, medical insurance, and social welfare systems. Here we see the regionally observed distribution of aging society in Japan. It indicates the aging index based on the figures representing the population of over 65 years, divided by that ranging from 0 to 14 years. The deep red means that the ratio is over 80%. Before 1970, aging society was still regionally limited. But 10 years later, in 1980, the aging of population rapidly spread in many rural areas where depopulation and aging will develop simultaneously, creating a situation extremely difficult to maintain the existence of local communities. Whether good or bad, high-rise buildings towering in Tokyo symbolize the progressing urbanization in Japan. In this country, the population aging is progressing at a great speed due to the rapid decrease of death rate resulting from the much lowered post-war birth rate and medical progress. How should cities change from now on, facing the new problem of aging population? The search to meet the challenge of this task has only started just now.